When was the last time you dreamed about what the future holds, or changing a moment from the past? These are questions that human beings have thought about since the beginning of our existence. Where would you go if you could travel through time?
It'd be great to time travel and watch some big dinosaurs walking around. It'd be great to time travel into one of the very exciting moments where there are great works of art being made, where great discoveries were being made. Watch the original Olympics.
For me, being able to reach a far distant future would very much be interesting because of those reasons. Just seeing and experiencing the world in a way that we just can't even fathom today whatsoever.
Well, we all wish we were younger. We all wish we had more time. So wouldn't it be cool to time travel? Furthermore, I wonder what it'd be like to meet Michael Faraday.
I think the world would look totally different. You think 100 years ago, how different things were.
I feel that we all of us, want to know what's going to happen in the future. And all of us would like to know what would happen in the past, to either see things that happened in the past or to alter things in our life. You can say, I don't believe this desk is here, but then you're saying, I don't want to believe facts. That's a fact. Time travel is real.
Join us in a mind-bending exploration of time travel, its origins, its evolution, and its influence on how we perceive time itself.
On people's minds. You always think of, well, what if I could have done this better?
I think people are interested in time travel because, for one, for the same reason that they're interested in flying. It's not something we can do.
People always have this idea that they wish they could go back in time and change something, to do something differently.
Doctor Who isn't just a TV show, it's a lifestyle. It's true.
Doctor Who is awesome.
I picked up my fashion statements from him.
I really like Back to the Future.
I love Back to the Future.
I like Heroes. Yatta!
It's a lesson, really. It's every time travel movie and TV show kind of teaches a lesson.
Ancient Rome.
Time travel is popular in our mainstream culture. And if you look for it, you'll realize that it's everywhere. From TV shows to movies, your favorite books, video games. There is even a time travel store. So, when did our obsession with time travel begin? The earliest known record on time travel can be traced back to one of the first written texts in human history, the Mahabharata, an ancient Hindu scripture from India. Once, there was an ancient kingdom ruled by the king Rayavata. Feeling that no one could prove to be good enough to marry his lovely and talented daughter, he took her with him to Brahmaloka, the home of Brahma.
He was ruling, he had a very beautiful daughter, very qualified. He wanted to find a suitable husband for her. So he went to the creator god Brahma in Brahmaloka, and he took his daughter with her.
When King Rayavata and his daughter arrived, Brahma was listening to a musical performance. They waited until the performance ended before approaching the god and asking his wisdom in selecting the perfect husband.
So Brahma asked that who are the kings he want to consider for her husband. So he gave some names. So Brahma started laughing.
To that, God Brahma smiled and said, "All of your daughter's suitors, their sons and grandsons, no longer exist. Centuries upon centuries have passed on earth, and they are no longer alive." The king and his daughter hurried back to their kingdom, only to realize that while they only spent minutes in Brahmaloka, a millennia had passed on earth.
So when he came here, he was actually very surprised that everything had changed. And moreover, people looked different. He himself and his daughter, they were very tall. Now people were of small size.
The king and his daughter were now in a completely new world. Since that story, written over 2,500 years ago, countless other myths and legends have been recorded across the world where people have experienced similar fates, like sleeping untouched through the passage of time, or journeying into a mystical land where time behaves differently. These were the precursors of the time travel stories we know today. Time travel was a magical and mysterious phenomenon. But that was all about to change.
Railroads were made possible by Watt's discovery of steam power.
In the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution was in full swing. Before, the perception of time was hazy and imprecise, as people relied on sundials and hourglasses to measure their day. These mechanisms improved as clocks and watches were made. As progress marched forward, time became an important part of our lives. We relied on its accuracy as transportation evolved and timetables were set around minutes instead of days.
We have broadened our horizons, and the end is not yet in sight. New designs like these cars of the future.
As new inventions and technologies were discovered, it seemed like anything was possible in the future. This evolving world inspired a new genre of thinkers and writers, like the Spanish novelist Enrique Gaspard. In 1887, Gaspard wrote what many believe to be the first story to feature a machine that can travel through time, El Anacronópete. The novel follows the inventor, Don Sidulfo, and his crew, and their adventures as they visit major historical events. With El Anacronópete, you can eat breakfast at 7 in Paris in the 19th century, lunch at noon in Russia with Peter the Great, and dinner at 5 in Madrid with Cervantes. 7 years later, the British novelist H.G. Wells would write the most iconic time travel story of our era, The Time Machine.
Relax. You've all the time in the world.
You're all right, David. It's exactly what I have. All the time in the world.
When he was a student, H.G. Wells began to write about a machine that could travel through time. After numerous drafts, it took shape and was published in 1895 as The Time Machine. It was an instant success and marked Wells' career as one of the forerunners of the science fiction genre. While entertaining, Wells wrote The Time Machine in order to share his political views on England and what would happen if capitalism continued to exploit the working class for the benefit of the rich. Wells' Time Machine is crucial in the time travel genre because he imagined A machine that could travel, not only to the past, but also to the future, which no one had written about before. I saw huge buildings rise up faint and fair and pass like dreams. The slowest snail that ever crawled dashed by too fast for me. The jerking sun became a streak of fire, a brilliant arch in space, and I could see nothing of the stars.
You have to remember that time travel stories were not new with H.G. Wells's book. For example, one of the extremely important people in Connecticut, Mark Twain, wrote A Connecticut Yankees King Arthur's Court.
That can't be Bridgeport.
Yonder, Varlet, is Camelot.
Camelot?
Capital of the Kingdom of Britain. Residence and state of King Arthur's court.
King Arthur? What year is this?
This is the year of our Lord, 528.
In all stories like this, you either had someone got hit on the head or lightning. What H.G. Wells is different is that he had a machine. It was a device. And that was the thing that was important to me, because if you can do that, then that means that it's something that you have control of. You just have to learn how to put the device together.
Wells didn't believe in time travel, but the science in his novel tracked so well with the revolutionary view of space-time that it emerged in physics a decade later.
Physics is very predictive, and it has to do with the evolution of systems in time. So Newton's law talks about how things evolve in time. Einstein's equations talk about how things evolve in time. Quantum mechanics discusses how things evolve in time.
In the last century, the scientific community around the world has made great leaps in conceptualizing time. But there was one person and theory that would change our understanding of time forever.
The key to the atom's secrets was first given to the world in 1905, when the genius Albert Einstein defined the relation between all matter and energy and evolved his revolutionary theory of special relativity.
Whereas Newton and his contemporaries believed that time ran at a constant rate, no matter where you were in the universe, Einstein broke that perception with a revolutionary concept that time was relative.
Einstein was the first person to realize that time was not an absolute flowing thing, but rather something which could be different depending on the situation.
And so it's an extraordinary thing. You and I, as humans, living our life on our happy earth here, we imagine time passing at a constant rate. Albert Einstein was apparently the first guy to imagine that the speed of time is not constant. Since the speed of everything else can vary, you can go X, Y's, Y, Y's, Z, Y's at different rates. Why couldn't the actual time change? And he was right.
Time travel definitely is possible based on Einstein's theories. That's an important part. I mean, the thing that makes physicists believe it, and the thing that should make the general public believe that time travel is possible, is that it's anchored in Einstein's theories of relativity. And we actually have demonstrated the possibility experimentally, as well as theoretically, that time travel into the future is possible. That has been done. Not dramatically with people, but definitely with subatomic particles, and even on fractions of a second with people. If you move fast enough, your heart rate slows down, your metabolism slows down. You don't notice it, but other people would see that. That would mean that you would age less than other people, and eventually, if we travel fast enough, then you would actually be able to travel into the future. Only maybe hours might pass for you, or a few years, whereas decades could be passing for other people. And we've already seen that with experiments that have been done with passenger jets. One very famous one was done at the Naval Observatory, and they kept a clock at rest and put the other clock on an ordinary passenger jet and flew it around the world. They brought it back, they found the clock that had been on the passenger jet had actually slowed down. It was only by fractions of a second, but that meant that the clock and the passengers on it had actually traveled fractions of a second into the future.
Gravity affects the way that clocks run. Does this mean that somewhere in the universe, time travel into the future will be possible?
When general relativity was invented, there was a lot of discussion of whether there's some kind of what's called the twin paradox, when there's some kind of paradox about what would happen if you took one of a pair of twins and took them in a spaceship a long way away.
You could get in a rocket and you could leave the Earth. You could put a camera on yourself while you're traveling in the rocket, and you could keep a camera on the Earth. And you could stay in constant video contact on the trip. And the video show he would see of the Earth would see everybody racing around. And people watching him would see him moving very slowly. And those images show him just moving very slowly and eating, very slowly and going to bed seemingly every 6 months. He goes to bed and then he spends 6 months in bed or something and he doesn't move.
Affirmative.
When he comes back, you're not really surprised that he's aged less because you've watched him the whole time and you've seen him in slow motion and he's seen everything on the Earth going by quickly. And there's no paradox there. His lifespan is still a human lifespan. It's just that in the course of his human lifespan, a lot more time has gone by on Earth. So he ends up in the future where he's then stuck. He cannot return because there's no backward in time travel, so he's just then lives 100 years in the future. That's fine by the laws of physics.
Time traveling into the future is theoretically possible. In a sense, some astronauts have been time travelers, as they have traveled milliseconds into the future. However, traveling to the past presents far more complications.
Apparently, there are certain conditions, theoretically, where you can get from one part of the universe to another part of the universe at a different time through a mathematical thing people call a wormhole, because it would be a narrow hole that only a worm could fit through and so on. But my understanding of wormholes that are not in science fiction is that also if you tried to pass through those, it'd be like going into the extraordinary gravity of a black hole. A black hole is a star that's so big. How big is it? It's so big that it has so much gravity that not even light can escape from it. So it's an ironic thing. It's a star that is inherently invisible. This would kill you. If you tried to go through the wormhole, you'd be stretched extraordinarily thin, 100 kilometers long, and turn to a bloody mess in an instant. But theoretically, it is a fabulous thing. All we got to do is overcome that problem.
This evolving idea of time in physics has laid the groundwork for time travel stories, which gained popularity in the 20th century. It provided inspiration for science fiction writers and encouraged a greater exploration of the possibilities of time travel.
I think time travel is, it's a narrative device. I mean, ultimately, in science fiction, that's what you're doing. You're thinking of a way that you're going to be able to tell a story from a unique perspective. Ideally, it's integrated intimately with the theme of your story. Charles Yu wrote a book called How to Live Safely in a Science Fictional Universe, which uses time travel to sort of examine nostalgia for childhood and your relationships with your parents. And it was awesome. I mean, it did exactly what I felt like, it should do.
Everyone has a time machine. Everyone is a time machine. It's just that most people's time machines are broken. The strangest and hardest kind of time travel is the unaided kind. People get stuck. People get looped. People get trapped. But we are all time machines.
You don't see stories about trying to change the past in ancient mythology. Time travel stories about changing the past, they really only appear in modern times. It is because in the past, we believed in fate, and it's only in modern times that the idea of free will became really popular. The first story in which you see a character who gets essentially a prophecy from the future and successfully avoids it is Charles Dickens' story, A Christmas Carol. In that story, Ebenezer Scrooge, he is shown a vision of his future by the ghost of Christmas is yet to come. He sees that he will die unmourned, and he is horrified by the idea. What he is essentially asking is, do I have free will? Is my future fixed?
My favorite was a Star Trek episode called City on the Edge of Forever, where Kirk and Spock go back in time and something has happened in the past to negate their whole reality, make it not actually have ever happened. So they have to undo it by finding that one event, that one thing that happened that changed the course of history.
Spock! If that is a doorway back through time, could we somehow take Bones back a day in time, then relive the accident?
Time travel is a fun storytelling device, so I think people like it for that. It spices up an otherwise dull story. You get fun paradoxes. We've seen things like Back to the Future where Marty starts to fade away because maybe he's going to end up separating his parents or whatever.
Another way time travel has influenced pop culture is in video games.
For ages, I've been trapped here, counting hours like the sands of time.
There's a lot of games that let you actually play with time directly, like Link's the Time Cat, Time Traveling Cat, and Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, Braid, and most of them have to deal with unwinding time, just going back in time and starting again. They don't deal with like the branching time. Although some of them, like Super Time Force, is kind of like you experience time in one way, your character does this, then you rewind, but that path is still happening, and then you can add to it and kind of layer in these characters from different spaces together. In the simplest form, that rewinding of time is something you get used to with all software and all applications. You like, I want to undo this, I want to undo this whole day. You know, you kind of wish you could rewind it and try it again.
Of course, that's why I'll have to do it. Yesterday, through the time machine.
In Day and the Tentacle, Fred Edison, the mad scientist, has these two tentacle kind of creatures. They're like octopus tentacles that hop around, and they don't have any bodies, they're just tentacles. And one of them drinks toxic sludge and becomes super intelligent and grows little arms and decides to take over.
Take on the world.
The kids arrive back at the mansion and accidentally set them free. And you know they did take over the world because 200 years in the future, one of your characters travels to that time and finds the world taken over by tentacles, and the tentacles went kind of the Planet of the Apes.
Yikes.
I think of time travel in science fiction as like a can of worms. Like, it's a science fiction trope. You know, there's countless examples and people have done it in a million different ways, and that's great. But if you're going to bring in time travel, you better have a really good reason, right? Because you are automatically introducing a mind-bending concept that people are going to have to puzzle out.
We were playing really fast and loose with the logic of it, because if you think too much about the logic of time travel, you usually write yourself into a hole where like it doesn't make any sense. And if you're making a movie, you have this advantage of, we'll just make a lot of action happen in that part, and no one will think about, hey, wait a second, should that have not, that person couldn't have done that, because if they had done that, they wouldn't have been alive to do this other thing. And if you think about that stuff, they usually get into the circular logic that makes it impossible. So you just have an explosion, and people run, and then no one has any time to think. If you keep the plot moving fast enough, people don't think about all the time travel paradoxes.
Time travel can generally be categorized into 3 theories. One of them is the dynamic timeline, also sometimes referred to as the butterfly effect, where even the smallest changes in the past can have a huge impact in the future. In this world, strange contradictions can happen, like the grandfather paradox.
Here's a puzzle about time travel. If you went back in time and you met someone who really is your grandfather, could you or could you not kill your grandfather? It seems like you could, because you got the gun, nobody's stopping you. And it seems like you couldn't, because if you did, you would never have existed. But if that's true, then where did I come from to have gone back and killed him? Who's this time traveler?
Another theory is the fixed timeline. No matter how much you try to change the past, it's essentially locked in time. Call it destiny or fate. In this world, the time traveler was meant to travel through history.
That actually illustrates another fun thing about time travel, the possibility of closed loops of information. So here's a time travel story. I go back in time and I teach my earlier self how to build a time machine. And I have the time machine, and I know how to make the time machine, so then I get in the time machine and go back in time and teach myself how to make it. So I ask, where did the information about how to make the time machine come from? It doesn't come from anywhere, it's just a loop.
And the third theory is the multiverse, which opens up infinite scenarios like multiple realities and alternate worlds.
This means that for every decision that you make, there is going to be a split in the universe in which all the alternatives play out. This is actually based on a real scientific theory called the many worlds theory. Quantum mechanics says that you can't predict exactly what happens next, and this leads to the fact that the universe may play out all the alternatives, but just in parallel.
But if this is true, if millions of universes playing out endless possibilities exist, then there must be a universe where the multiverse does not exist, and that in itself is a paradox.
There are more serious reasons to be interested in time travel because of how time travel connects to a lot of different topics. So maybe I'll just give 2 examples. One is time travel connects to general questions in the philosophy of time. So like for example, if time is like space, then objects in the past and objects in the future are real. They're just as real as objects in the present. You might think, well, if you can travel to other places in space, why couldn't you travel to other places in time? Time travel connects to free will. So what does it mean to be free to do something? Since questions of what would a time traveler be free to do? Would a time traveler be free to kill his or her earlier self, kill his or her grandparents? That then bears on questions of free will.
You know, why are we here? Actually, the question's invalid. There is no why. Why do you assume there's a why that we're here? We shouldn't be asking that question. And that makes me think of a lot of things about, is our perception of time kind of what keeps tripping us up and making us think that time travel is possible? It's this way that we're experiencing the world, and we think of time because we read history books and stuff that bring the past to life. It seems like a place we should be able to go, and we can recreate it in movies and games and stuff. We should be able to go there, but is it just some mistake we're making in our minds that even allows us to conceive of the possibility of time travel?
Eastern religions and philosophies like Hinduism and Buddhism have a different perspective, that time is an illusion and a figment of the mind.
This human body is a replica of the universe. Whatever is existing in the universe is existing in your physical body in a minute form. So Now science is trying to study the universe. They're going externally actually to the places trying to go. In India, they studied the universe by studying the body then itself. So they meditated within and they understood their body, and that's how they understood the universe. Time travel is possible, but not by the Western means as they're trying. You hear about time machine and things like that. Time is different and space is different. So you can travel in space. But to travel in time, you have to go beyond space. So meditation takes you beyond that, and then you can actually come to a state where you are not under the influence of law of karma, and then you see the reality from a different picture. And then the whole picture becomes available to you. The so-called time travel is then possible. Time is unchanging, but we feel the influence of time only by seeing the change. If you don't see the change, you will not feel time. Just like you watch a video and you can stop it. So when you stop it, then it's like a still frame, nothing changes. But you can go back and forth. So if no change happens, then there's no time. So therefore, by the process of yoga, you can actually transcend time. We don't change. We don't die. We don't become old. We don't become sick. We are eternal, unchanging reality. So we are the unchanging, and if we can realize ourselves, then you will transcend time. You will go beyond time and you will see actually time is not moving. We think that time is moving. Time does not move, it is the matter which transforms in it.
Time, to me, is an illusion that has purpose. It's all in one line. I think the past, the present, and the future is all like one line. I think we're just focused in the present. But if we're open-minded, if we can expand ourselves to that thought, you can go back and you can go forward. Anybody can do this.
Oh, I totally consider that every time I meditate. Where am I going when I meditate? Opening up to a different time space, a different thing. You want this experience that you've died, but then you're moving on into this other life, and how does that look? And that's, traveling back in time. You could be going forward, you could be going back. You're not really knowing where you're going to land.
You can go back in time in terms of past lives and so forth. That would literally be going back in time, which we can do, or at least see, and then going into the future. And that's also time travel. And that's the way I look at it, because you can go back and forward in time.
If you look at the indigenous people, the shamans of their time, they were traveling. That was kind of their job, from a healing perspective. So the shamans would go into the other realms, be it past, be it present, be it future, to bring back what they needed for their people or for that individual person. And so that, to me, is a form of time travel. If you're looking at the people at the time, you don't know. They're still there, but they're not there.
As a kid, I always considered reading to be a form of time travel. So anytime I was in a situation that I didn't like, or if I was bored or anything, I would have a book with me and I would stick my nose into it, and then I'd look up later and be in a different place. And I always considered it a form of perceptual time travel.
Mentally, what you can do with your mind, you can be somewhere and actually feel it. So you really wouldn't need to almost, I think, be there physically, as long as you can feel it and sense it. I think people think of time travel more as an actual event outside themselves, where they can do it, move their body, get into a machine or whatever, when actually you have to have an internal sense of self. And when you have your internal self, then you're able to time travel, past, future, anywhere you want to go, in your own mind, you will be able to do that internally.
Time is a big issue in computer science because usually we care about how quickly we can solve a problem. My more unusual take and what I sort of bring to the table is the idea that time travel backwards is easy and time travel forwards is hard from the perspective of a computer.
Erik's work is on data structures, which is a particular way to store and organize data on a computer so it can be used efficiently.
And so time, usually, computer scientist thinks about the running time of a program. It's like you start it, it's one point, it's going to run for a while, do a bunch of operations, and then at the end it has your answer. The more computation you do, the more time it takes. At least the naive perspective is that space and time could be viewed as the same thing. There's just one more dimension, so the four-dimensional view of space-time. It's certainly very useful geometrically. We actually use it a lot in geometry. We think about moving objects or folding objects, things like that. It's appealing also from a time travel perspective because if you think of time as just another dimension, then why not go backwards?
With retroactive data structures, you can go back in time, say, right at the beginning of time, and say, actually, I meant to put at time -1, I meant to do, insert. I want to go back in time, do this, and then return to the present, say, what's my data structure look like now?
The idea in retroactive data structures is you're storing some data in a database, like maybe all the bank transactions at your bank, and various operations happen over time. There's a deposit, a withdrawal at various times of the day. And then you'd like to, at the end of the day, say, oh, actually, there was a mistake. That withdrawal was invalid. I'd like to undo that operation in the past. And so this is like the ability to time travel. You'd like to go back in time, and what you'd like is for all the ramifications of that change to propagate forward. And we're thinking, in some sense, how to simulate time travel. But if you look at it the right way, the things that we prove about how to simulate time travel actually relate to how the universe might time travel. At least in computer science, we have a very computational perspective. We think of the universe as a computer. We've proved that in general, it's impossible to time travel forward any quicker than we do it now. It takes a lot of work to simulate physics and to make all this stuff happen. And so if we were to go back in time, make a change, that's actually pretty reasonable. You can prove in computer science land, at least, that it's not too hard in theory for the universe to remember the past, to remember all the things that happened before us. So it's plausible to me, as a computer scientist, ignoring physics, that we could just say, all right, I want to go back 1 millennia and see what the universe was like. And that should be, it's conceivable the universe could implement that quickly, efficiently. And that could be an instantaneous thing to go back in time.
A more realistic way we can experience time travel is something that we've been doing for centuries. Astronomers have been studying the cosmos over the years, and through every telescope, they've been peering into the past.
The SETI Institute was founded in 1984, and the intention was to set up some sort of nonprofit research organization that would be concerned with the question of life beyond Earth. Time is really an important concept when you're talking about, looking for life elsewhere. The Earth has been here for roughly 4.5 billion years. It's had life for most of that. It's only had intelligent life, Homo sapiens. We've only had that for the last 200,000 years. The universe is 3 times as old as the Earth. So these timescales give you some idea that, there could be a lot of life out there that's billions of years more advanced than we are. But when you talk time travel, well, that offers up all sorts of intriguing possibilities. For example, could we be visited by beings from the future? Pick up more sensitive, it's more sensitive. You can see much fainter signals if you have a big antenna. This one, this is the antenna we're using these days. Here at the Institute, we don't really worry too much about time travel, even though in some sense we take advantage of it. I mean, when we point our antennas at some star system 1,000 light years away, and we occasionally do that. I mean, we're trying to pick up a signal and find out, you know, is there somebody there that's clever enough to build a radio transmitter? Well, clearly, if we were to pick up a signal, that signal took 1,000 years to get here. So in a sense, we would be looking back in time. When you look at the moon, you're not seeing the moon as it is now. Of course, you're seeing it the way it was about 1.5 seconds ago when the light left it. If you're looking at star systems for signals, that might be 10, 100 years, 1,000 years old. When you look at these distant galaxies, of course, you're looking at them the way they were 10 billion years ago. So in a sense, just by looking at them, you're going back in time. It's like some sort of crystal ball, and you can look back billions of years, right? Now, you're not actually going there, but you see what the universe was like when it was just, if you will, just a kid. There's that kind of time travel. We don't actually get in a machine, pull a lever, and go back 10 billion years, but we can see into the past. And so in that sense, astronomers are always dealing with time travel. To some extent, the interest in time travel is an appeal to a kind of immortality. I mean, being able to travel in time doesn't mean that you're immortal. But, you know, maybe you want to know how your great-great-great-grandkids are doing, if there are any, right? And what are they like? And does anybody ever remember your existence? There's one more possibility for time travel that some of my colleagues have actually decided to use, and that is get yourself frozen. Put yourself in some sort of refrigerated unit when you die, and then, you know, sometime in the future, when they figure out how to reverse all the damage that was caused to your body because of the freezing, they'll bring you back.
The possibility of life after death is explored in Phoenix, Arizona by the Cryonic Society. They believe that cryobiology, the freezing of biological matter, is the answer. They propose freezing bodies in cold storage capsules. Scientists are mostly skeptical.
Cryonics is human cryopreservation, which means that we are using low temperatures to preserve a person who is no longer treatable by contemporary medicine in as pristine a state as possible, such that they can reach a time that maybe medical technology can not only reverse the cryopreservation procedure, but also cure whatever caused their death in the first place. That's a tall order, obviously. That's the thing everybody wants to see, but it's going to take a really long time and a lot of incremental progress towards that goal. But that progress is definitely being made right now. There's a lot of speculation among cryonicists about why people don't sign up when they would not turn down CPR, for example. To us, it's kind of the same thing. It's just an extension of modern medicine and a life-saving technique. The biggest issue I think people have is a psychological barrier to what we like to call the temporal difference between the time you're stabilized and the potential time you're resuscitated. That's a huge disconnect because under normal circumstances in medicine, say you have a heart attack, if you are successfully resuscitated, it's going to be within a few minutes, and you haven't lost your friends or your family or your life continuity. In cryonics, at least today, that is definitely not the case. You don't know how long it's going to be before you're back. This is one of my favorite things to think about because I think everyone agrees that it would subjectively feel very much like time travel. You're going to be taking healthy people, not people who are dying for any particular reason, and applying this reversible suspended animation technology to put them into suspension and then take them out of it at will. The concepts don't exist for the same purpose, but they are extremely similar.
A model demonstrates how one person, a California man who died of cancer, has already been frozen. A freezing liquid replaces the blood supply, and the subject is wrapped in aluminum foil and placed in a capsule at 200...
Cryonics itself is a newer concept, but I think we all know that mankind has long had the desire to either live a longer life or live forever. We've always wanted to push the limits of our lifespan. And now that we're actually starting to do so, it seems like, we've whetted that taste a little bit more. We want more.
Realistically, I think time travel is pretty unlikely, but I like to entertain the possibility that it's possible because I think it's more fun to imagine a world in which things like time travel could happen someday.
The problem is not the technology. The problem is always the physics. If the physics doesn't allow it, or maybe the physics does allow it, but you don't know how to do it, then you really can't build it.
When you see that the whole universe will end before time travel is allowed, it made me think that maybe the laws of physics are conspiring to prevent this.
Though there are many ways to consider time travel, physicists, the ones who work with space and time, the ones who could have the final answer, don't think it's possible.
I would be pretty surprised if anyone was currently proposing an experiment which would hope to indicate that backward in time travel was possible. I would be surprised by that.
I've been working on the subject of time travel for several decades, ever since I was 11 years old, and I became aware of the whole notion that time travel in a time machine might be possible. And it started out as a fantasy, and I learned the real science behind it, Einstein's theory. The first 10 years of my life were very, very happy. I came from a very loving family. And I was the oldest of 4 children, and I grew up in the Bronx. And my father was a television repairman. And he was very, very good at his craft. The thing is that he looked healthy. We didn't know that he had a very weak heart. And he died unexpectedly of a massive heart attack. And for me, it was like the death of Superman, because here was this person who seemed to me to be indestructible, and now he was gone. The shock to me was something that I've never experienced anything like it since. My world just fell completely apart. The thing is I went into a depression, actually, as a child. And I'm not sure what would have happened to me if I didn't have, one of the gifts he gave me was love for reading. And I love reading science fiction. And about a year after he died, when I was 11, I came across H.G. Wells' book, The Time Machine. Actually, it was a Classics Illustrated version of that. It changed my life because at the very beginning of it said, scientific people know very well that time is just a kind of space, and we can move forward and backward in time just as we can in space. And when I read that, it was like, this is the answer for me. If I could build a time machine, then I could go back into the past and see him again and maybe change things. That became my saving. That was it. That was my life preserver. That was the thing that saved me. And I developed a passion for that. The question is that how was I going to, achieve that? This Classics Illustrated had a picture about what the time machine would look like. And I decided to try to do this based on, putting together bicycle parts and everything to try to do that. And of course it didn't work. I even used some of my father's equipment my mother had kept. I was disappointed but not discouraged because it said scientific people know very well. And that, when I look back now, I realize just how important that phrase in the book was, because it meant there was a distinction between the fantasy of something and the reality of something, and that reality was science. I went to Penn State as a physics major, but I didn't tell any of the people what I was interested in. I kept this as a secret because even as a child, I knew, number one, that people were already worried about me, and I thought this is probably not going to be a good idea to tell them I was interested in building a time machine. So I didn't tell them, anyone about it. And when I went to college, I still realized that this was not something that I should talk about. And certainly, when I eventually came to be interviewed at the University of Connecticut physics department, I knew it would be instant suicide if I said, oh, by the way, what I want to do is to build a time machine. So no, I kept all of that secret. But I did continually try to decide, is it possible? Is there a way that one could use Einstein's general theory of relativity in a way that might allow for the possibility? So that was always going on there. In the beginning, I was afraid of what my colleagues would think because physics is a conservative science. I was afraid that they wouldn't take me seriously. I'm grateful of the fact that I'm now living in a time in which my colleagues are much more open about these ideas. Now it's just simply a matter of what sort of experiments can be done. Gravity is matter. In Einstein's theory, not only can matter affect gravity, but also energy can affect gravity. Gravity can affect time. Now, light does not have mass, it's not matter, but light does have energy. So that means that light could create gravity, thus light could affect time. I've been able to theoretically show that by using a certain configuration of light, in particular a circulating light beam, we can alter space, and that could lead us to alter space-time. Just showing that very first stage would be exciting and new. So this is much larger scale than would be practical for an experiment. The actual experiment would be something that would be squeezed down to about the size of a human hair. But the energies might not be achievable, but it's an engineering problem. It's like trying flying. It was very, very difficult. We didn't achieve flight until the beginning of the 20th century, okay? And rocket travel, later on in the century. For the first time in the laboratory, we will have been able to use light to manipulate space. These 4 lasers are creating a circulating light beam. That's one of the things that I'm looking at, is how can we send information back into the past? And I've actually looked at a practical way in which that could be done. Neutrons spin. If you have a neutron spinning up, you can assign a number to it, or a symbol. Let's say I call a spinning up neutron a 1. Suppose I call a spinning down neutron a 0. So I have a stream of neutrons and spin up, spin down. What's that? That's a binary code. What will happen is that as the empty space is being twisted, it will actually twist the spin. So by using neutrons, I can actually send information back into the past that could be decoded to give me information about what is going to happen in the future. Think of it as being an early warning device. Imagine if we could warn ourselves of future disasters. For instance, hurricanes, tsunamis, like devastated Japan, or the Hurricane Katrina, the thousands of lives that could be saved by having advanced information about, the future. Or suppose we could send information back to us about cures that have happened in the future. Okay? Think how exciting that would be. It took a long time, but it was worth it. I mean, it has been worth it. And it's been a fantastic, journey for me, and it's still ongoing. But I do know now that it can be done. It's just going to be, difficult. But I also know that there's some drawbacks associated with it, that when you change things in the past, that can radically change things in the present with unintended consequences.
If you have backward in time travel, it's pretty hard to think of how to have a consistent picture of evolution, of time evolution, or laws of physics which are consistent when you evolve in time, because if you can go forward in time and affect the past, well, it makes it very complicated to know how you're going to understand how you move forward in time from where you are now. Because if I tell you, well, if I know the present well enough and I know the laws of physics, I can predict what's going to happen in 10 minutes. But if you tell me in 10 minutes you may appear in my past, well, then you may affect the present, and then it's hard for me to know what it's going to look like in 10 minutes.
You have to remember that it's the device that's creating this effect in time. In my case, I'm talking about circulating light. But even if you're talking about wormholes or rotating black holes, all of these processes start at some time, which means that you can go back in time, but you can only go back to the time that the process itself was created. And that would mean that the time machine that I was talking about would have the limitation of only being able to go back. For instance, if you turn it on today and leave it on for 100 years, someone 100 years from now, if you're leaving it on constantly, could travel back 75 years, 50 years, all the way back up to the time the machine was turned on, but you can't go earlier than that. That I didn't even really realize until I finally had solved the problem, which meant that it was a barrier to being able to go back and see my father. I would like to have it happen in my lifetime, but once again, as I said, these are expensive things to occur. But I do know that I've been helping to establish the basis of it, so I know it is going to happen. I believe it's going to happen in this century. That I definitely believe.
Dr. Ron Mallet isn't the only one inspired by science fiction. Over the past century, time travel has provided fertile ground for novelists, storytellers, philosophers, as well as scientists, as they explore the possibilities of our universe and our place in it.
Good science fiction has to be based on good science. I mean, I've always said that. And for me, science fiction is inspirational. I mean, and time travel is generally part of science fiction, or the ability to overcome what we currently believe are the constraints of nature. So many science fiction ideas have come to pass. You can't help but wonder if there's something we don't know.
So science allows people to fly, allows you to look inside of people without opening them, allows you to communicate with people on the other side of the earth, send images through space, which you can see. And I think it's just imagination, which takes you to the next level. I mean, that's part of what science fiction is. You know, expanding the boundaries of what's real in science to other domains.
I mean, it's, I think, in every scientist's nature to be a skeptic and to question what we think is true. And I think that the science fiction is fun, but it also drives us to wonder about, well, maybe this is possible. You know, it'd be really nice to have flying cars. It would be really nice to have teleportation. It'd be really nice to have faster than light travel. It'd be really nice to have time travel. Science fiction is all around us. Most scientists are trying to make science fiction happen. So that's a big driving force.
On the one hand, every scientist you meet has been inspired by science fiction at some point. And by seeing science fiction and sharing it culturally, by having pop culture icons, you know, like Star Trek or even Terminator, it gives a culture, a language to communicate ideas that are for things that have never existed.
Oh my God, you see that seat pedal? Yeah.
travel in time, I would probably go back in time.
Back to the 20s for a night and party. That might be kind of fun.
My number one choice would be medieval times, just to see if there actually was a medieval times restaurant. And
I want to go to the future. That seems pretty cool.
Definitely the future. I'd like to see what's going on 100 years from now in the United States.
I'd go to the early 1990s in Seattle because I love their music.
Go back to see a Queen concert or something like that. I thought that would be really awesome.
My high school days, because it was really difficult for me back then. So I want to tell myself that it's going to get better. Don't worry about it.
There's this whole history of the universe, and I've only seen one little tiny slice, one little brief flash. And what will it be like to live in the 30th century? Something that everybody wants to know, and we don't have the answers to that. We don't really know. Even in the past, we can only sort of roughly describe things. We can't experience them.
All of the movies and all of the stories and all of the imagination that goes into that is towards that end, because we want to know whether we can do it or not, and we're going to figure out whether we can do it or not.
How many of you believe in the possibility of time travel? Well, quite a few.
I'm open to the fact that it could be that we arrive in a parallel universe, or the possibility that we really do alter the universe. I think it may be that the universe is much more flexible and stranger than we could have imagined.
Human mind has a big difficulty in staying in the present. The mind is therefore always dreams of future, or it thinks of the past, which some nice moment we have passed. So the reason for it not staying in present is the desire for happiness.
I don't think there's any of us who's not wondered, what's going to happen next? What's the future going to be like? It may not be even that they've thought about the future of everything, but just the future of their family, but they've thought about the future. In the past, who of us has not had either some regret or some interest in something that happened in our past and said, I wonder what would have happened if I had taken that path? What would have happened if I had met this person rather than that? I mean, we all have this passion to know what would happen if I could change something in the past, or what's going to happen next. I think that goes back to the beginning. We do know we have the basis for the possibility. It's just that we have to have the desire, the will to do it.
From ancient stories in the Mahabharata to El Anachronopide and H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, to Dr. Mallet's theory on ring lasers, mankind has been on a quest to control time. But is it possible? Can we do it? Will we be able to travel to the future or the past? The answer is still out there. The possibilities are endless, but all we have right now is the present. Someday, we might be able to answer the questions we have, and time travel will no longer be a dream, but a reality.